Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be doing another weapon breakdown for Battlefield 2042, and this time we're going to be covering the PKP-BP. In these weapon breakdowns we're going to go through a bunch of stats that you guys need to know, such as the rounds per minute, reload times, bullet velocity, damage over distance, bullets to kill over distance, and time to kill over distance as well. On top of those stats we'll then go over the recoil pattern for the weapon, and then lastly I'll go over some unique loadouts that I've crafted for specific playstyles for those of you who aren't 100% sure on which attachments to use. Before we get into it, if you guys do end up enjoying the video, then be sure to leave a like down below, and if you are new to the channel then definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications, as there's going to be plenty more content like this on the way in 2022. But with that being said, let's get stuck right into the weapon breakdown for the PKP-BP. So the PKP is obviously classed as an LMG, and you unlock this one at level 32, so you can get your hands on it pretty early on. It has a magazine size of 200 and it fires at a rate of 799 rounds per minute, which is in the top 3 or 4 fastest weapons in 2042. Now for its reload times, it takes 6.76 seconds for a tactical reload, which is when you manually reload it, or it has an empty reload time of 7.86 seconds, which is when it is automatically reloaded after running out of bullets, which is obviously a very long reload time, and that is one of the main downsides to any LMG. As for the velocity, it sends its ammunition down range at 800 meters per second, which is actually really decent and is on par or even above most of the assault rifles in the game, so despite some rough recoil, it is technically a really solid long range weapon. Now getting into the more detailed stats for the PKP, keep in mind that these values are all based off of body shots, and when it comes to the LMGs, headshots have a 2x multiplier, so any value that you see in these graphs are just doubled when you land them to the head rather than the torso or the limbs. The PKP deals 22 damage per bullet up to 74 meters, then between 75 and 149 meters it drops down to 18 damage per shot, and then at 150 meters and beyond it drops down to 15 damage per shot, so it has a pretty smooth damage drop off compared to most other weapons. As for the bullets that it takes to kill over distance, it takes 5 shots to kill up to 74 meters, then between 75 and 149 meters it takes 6 shots to kill, and then at 150 meters and beyond it will take 7 shots to the body to kill an enemy. Lastly, moving on to the time to kill over distance, it kills in 300 milliseconds up to 74 meters, then 375 milliseconds between 75 and 149 meters, and from 150 meters and beyond it will take 450 milliseconds to kill. Obviously these stats do vary quite a bit once you account for headshots and miss shots like I mentioned, but assuming you hit every shot through the body at these ranges, then these stats are accurate according to that situation. Now moving on, we have the recoil pattern for the PKP, and as you can see it has some absolutely wild kick on it, which on the flip side is at least predictable, so it does kick quite a bit, but as you can see it kicks vertically and to the right, so at least it's not overly hard to handle. What I will say too is that when you go prone or mount on a ledge for example, it does reduce that recoil quite a bit due to the bipod, and so if you do struggle quite a bit with handling the recoil, definitely try mounting it a bit more often. However, please do not become one of those annoying prone campers that just lays down in the corner, because absolutely no one likes that guy. Now moving on, like I mentioned, I've crafted 2 different loadouts that I often like to use on the PKP. I usually do 3, but the PKP barely has any attachments and it is somewhat one-dimensional anyway, so hopefully this can just give you guys a good starting point, and obviously these can be slightly altered and adjusted to your own preferences, so these are by no means set in stone. The first loadout that I wanted to cover is the close range build, and this one is really fun to use in any close quarter situations. I will say the PKP is still relatively slow to be using it like an SMG, but it can be a fun way to play regardless. For the sight I use the K8 Hollow, as that is just my personal preference. The sights aren't overly important for this build though. For the ammo I use the standard issue rounds. There aren't a whole lot of options here anyway, and these are just the best considering it is already a fairly large magazine size and keeps that high rate of fire. For the underbarrel there are actually no attachment options for the PKP, so there's nothing to change here. And then lastly for the barrel I use the tactical compensator, which just increases the accuracy of your shots while adding a little bit of extra recoil, which obviously isn't too much of an issue at close range. Now moving on to the second loadout that I wanted to cover, this one is the long range build, and exactly as it sounds, this one just makes the PKP a little bit more viable at long range, especially if you can try and mount it on some cover when you are entering a gunfight. For the sight I use the TV 2x scope. This one is a personal favourite of mine as it has a nice clear sight while also giving a tiny bit of extra zoom. For the ammo I use the high power extended magazine, as they just slightly increase the damage at range, which is obviously perfect for this build. For the underbarrel, again just the factory option, and then lastly for the barrel I use use the Warhawk compensator, as that will reduce your recoil at the cost of a little bit less accuracy, meaning the bullets will spread a tiny bit more, but that reduced recoil will help you stay on target. Like I said, this build is definitely going to make the weapon more effective at range, but it does still have a fair amount of recoil, and so it is hardly going to turn it into a marksman rifle or anything like that. So anyway, that is pretty much it for the PKP, guys. Personally, I do find this one a little bit harder to use at times, purely because it shoots as fast as an SMG, and I tend to sort of treat it like an SMG because of that, but it does still have a slower ADS speed and reload time and all those typical features of an LMG, so it's mostly just a weird one to use for me, but I do enjoy using it, and hopefully this guide helped you guys learn a thing or two about the weapon regardless of my skill with it, because it is a very solid weapon. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to leave a like down below, and if you are new, then consider subscribing to the channel with those notifications on. If you guys want to support the content that I make here on YouTube, then consider becoming a channel member. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.